What makes a fast race car? That's what we're going to be going through in this first episode of our new er8, the tech series. So, is it horsepower, lightweight maybe, really sticky slicks, a good driver? Yeah, there are of course many things and many opinions out there on the internet. There are lots of guys with really good and long experiences, and race engineers, and all these kinds of people with varying opinions. And yeah, you need to get the suspension set up absolutely perfect, or someone wants to have really good steering angles on the car, or shock setups, or have very high power engine, or really as lightweight of a car as possible. But yeah, what is it that actually makes a race car fast? This is of course going to be a very simplified version of that, but to fit this into a YouTube video, we really need to cut everything down to fit a single episode. So we're going to do a lot of simplifications, and because of that, I'm only going to be looking at the most important aspect of making a race car fast. And of course, there are some variances depending on what kind of racing you do, but for most racing that I'm involved in anyway, that's circuit racing, hill climb racing, these types of stuff, where you have lots of cornering and some straights between the corners, and that will be the focus of this episode now, because that's also what we're building our er8 for, and what most of our motorsport engine and stuff is based on anyway. But yeah, and before we start, if you're listening to this, this is take one, and owning, because we don't have time to take another take, so hopefully this will work. But stay with me. If there are some whoopsies, then it will just go straight into the video. So what makes a fast race car? And the main content, maybe you shouldn't see that, but we'll see. So this is the most important drawing you'll ever see. No, this is just stupid. But I don't have time to do anything better, so this is what we'll have to go with now. So this is basically a speed profile. So if we have the track distance here on the right, and we have a speed axis here on the imaginary y-axis, and then we have a speed something like this. So this would be like for a one corner racetrack that I'm not sure how that would look. I'm not sure if it's physically even possible to make a racetrack that would look like this. You might need some really small planet with like a single corner somehow, and I'm not really sure. Maybe someone comes up with some idea what this will look like, but for mathematical purposes and explaining stuff, this is perfect, because we have one corner here where we have a low speed, and this of course loops over here to the other side, and we have one straight where we do some acceleration, and here we have some braking area here. And so if we want to, for instance, add power to the vehicle setup, then let's see if I can draw some line here and see how that would show. So we would be starting off here at the corner at the same minimum velocity, basically. Trying to match this drawing here. So then once we start getting out of the tractional limited area, we can increase our acceleration, and ran out of mouse area there. And our top speed will be higher, but we'll need to start braking earlier, because we still need to reach this same deceleration curve here for the corner, and then we'll go into the corner here. And let me just quickly change the color of that so that we can see. Let's say that would be a red curve then, with increased power. So with increasing horsepower on the engine, you can see we can so this is the minimum cornering speed, basically after braking, before you start accelerating, the maximum lateral g forces you can pull in the corner here. So that will of course not change if you only increase the horsepower and keeping everything else on the car the same. And yeah, then we start accelerating out of the corner, we're traction limited, and we start getting the car straightened out on the straight and can start applying full power. And then when we have more power, then we can increase the speed, and of course the top speed will typically go up, but then we need to start braking earlier because we still need to hit the same deceleration curve, because again we haven't changed anything else on the car, we just magically added horsepower, so we need to get down to the same minimum speed. And of course this is a simplification, because if you have different power levels, you will want to take the corner differently and have so that you can use the strength of the car to your advantage. If you have more power, then you want to take the corner a little bit more square so that you can accelerate smoother. But all of that we're going to simplify out of this equation, because again we need to fit this into a single YouTube video. But so this is what happens if we increase power. And let's do another version here. Let's say if we increase our minimum cornering speed, so you can't probably see the cursor, but this was the minimum cornering speed, and we're just bumping that up instead now, and starting from here. And so then we will be accelerating out of the corner, and we'll start to taper off on the speed there. Running out of mouse space again. And we're going to be around here, and then of course we can start braking later also, so it will look something, and then we need to hit about there. Let's get this to some whatever green color or something like that to differentiate these. Okay, maybe I want to increase the thickness of this line also. It's a little bit more visible maybe. Okay, so let me explain what we're doing here. So if we, instead of magically increasing the horsepower on the engine, as this red curve is, so if we instead just magically increase the cornering speed on this green curve here, so we're increasing the cornering speed, so that means the minimum cornering speed is going up. And so when we start accelerating out of the corner, we have a higher speed, and of course this is a little bit poor drawing. Oh man, a whiteboard would maybe be easier, but we're stuck with this now. So we accelerate out of the corner, we have a higher speed here the whole way out of the corner. Then once we start getting past the maximum acceleration phase and we start getting into the aerodynamic drag of the car and how much that is slowing down, then we start the gain over the sort of reference setup, the blue curve here, starts decreasing. The top speed will be slightly higher because we have a higher cornering speed, so we have a longer sort of time to accelerate here, and we also brake later because we don't need to reduce the speed as much either. And of course also potentially this braking line will be steeper also, and this acceleration line can be steeper also, but that's beyond my hand drawing skills at the moment, so we'll just have to go with this. So we can see in this example here the difference between the red curve and the blue curve. So we can gain a little bit of speed up here at the top, but we're not gaining anything here at almost half of the lap on our one corner circuit here. So we're gaining a little bit on half of the track, but we're not gaining anything on the other half, and this is where we're going the slowest, so we're sort of like losing the most time there where we have the slowest speed. But then if we magically increase our minimum cornering speed instead, you can say we gain a huge amount of time here, and we also gain a little bit amount of time up top here, and also again big gains here. So I think in relation to magically gaining horsepower here, and we're faster half of the track basically on the straight, increasing cornering speed, we're both faster in the corner of course, but also faster out on the straight, also faster on the straight, and we also brake later, so gain a lot of time in the braking area. So of course we would then want to increase our minimum cornering speed, but how do we do that? And of course by significant margins. So if we're like magically increasing horsepower here, this would let's pull some number out of a magic rabbit's hat or something like that, and say that's whatever 25% increase in power to get this kind of a performance gain. So then this would also need to be around a 25% increase in cornering speed. So how are we going to do that? Of course, we're not going to be able to do that with roll bar adjustments or suspension tuning or camber adjustments, or, well, of course, if your camber is way off from what it should be, then yeah, you can do that. But yeah, so let's look at what actually this cornering speed here, where does this come from? How can we figure out what this minimum cornering speed is here? I have some equations. I would prefer to do this live, but unfortunately I'm not very good at doing the formatting here, and the formatting takes a long time, and yeah, no one wants to watch a 30-minute video of me trying to figure out how to get the font size on these changed. So yeah, we're stuck with me just going through this pre-arranged stuff, and that's not ideal, but what we're going with now. So we have centrifugal force in the corner, F(x), so x here is the vertical component, or wait, a horizontal component. Yeah, sorry about that. So the horizontal component on the force, so we have the mass of the car, velocity squared, or speed squared of the vehicle, and divided by the corner radius. So you can see here, yeah, if we, of course, the mass of the car in both of our examples here was fixed, so that doesn't change. The corner radius is the same, so that doesn't change, but the velocity squared is of course changing. So if we want to increase our cornering speed, then yeah, the difference of that squared results in the force on the car. We need to apply a much larger force. So if we have the square root of 2 increase in speed, so about 1.4, is that 1.41 times something like that anyway, increase in velocity, our centrifugal force is going to be doubled. So we need to get some serious gains in the sort of maximum sideways force we can apply to a car to get these significant cornering speed gains. But okay, let's go forward here. So yeah, then we have the vertical force. So what kind of a force is pressing down on the car, or on the tires actually more accurately here? And this is because we want the tire friction, because tire friction in this example on race cars is the only force that is pressing the cars sideways, unless you have sprint car stuff that have aerodynamics that actually press the car sideways, but I'll get back to that later. So the force pressing downwards on the car, that is of course the mass of the car, and the gravity constant, whatever that's called, gravity acceleration constant, something like that. And then, looking at traditional aerodynamic downforce stuff on the car, we have some constant times the speed of the car squared. Unless, yeah, of course, but yeah, let's not get into that. So yeah, of course, this constant here is, consists of multiple parameters, the density of the air, and frontal area and stuff like that, but these are all constant basically for a single racetrack on any given day. So yeah, this is just simplified as a downforce coefficient basically. And so our tire friction force, so these are more or less actual scientific stuff, or this downforce coefficient of course varies a little bit with speed also, because the Reynolds number on the car will change and so forth and so on. But it's more or less accurate. This tire force equation here, or the tire friction, is simplified quite a lot because the tire load response is not linear. So when you're in the sort of construction area sort of forces of that the tire is designed for, if you double the force or the vertical force pressing down on the tire, you don't double your maximum friction force. So you gain maybe 1.8 times the friction force or something like that. And that's the reason, for instance, why anti-roll bar adjustments and stuff work to balance cars also. But to model that accurately, this would be then dependent on some tire model, and specific tires have different types of curves, and where in the load area you are will affect those. So yeah, it's not important to get into that now, but just so you guys know that this is a simplification and you can't just use this for everything, but you need to sort of know a little bit about how much of an error you're doing when you're doing this simplification stuff. Okay, but combining these equations, so we have fx here, and fz here, so we basically insert this in here, and then this equates to this part. Then we end up with this equation, and we rewrite that basically and pull out the velocity squared from that, so we get our cornering speed. Velocity squared equals to mass of our car times the gravity constant or acceleration constant, whatever that's called, the tire friction multiplier, the corner radius, and then we divide by the mass of the car minus the downforce coefficient, again times the tire friction coefficient and the corner radius. So then we might want to analyze this a little bit further and see what we can actually sort of figure out from this equation, because I mean this is very simple to do, and anyone with any kind of basic understanding about anything can like calculate this in 10 minutes, so this is nothing special, but we need to like understand what this means and how this should be implemented, and how this affects different types of cars and different types of racing stuff and things like this. So it's of course always important, regardless of what you're researching or looking into or listening to or things like this. It doesn't matter at all in science, like consensus stuff or what someone's experience or background is, or what kind of authority is some professor or some random guy commenting something on something on a YouTube video or in some forum post or whatever. That does not matter at all in relation to if someone is actually correct or not. The only way to know if like what to listen to and what not to listen to is to go through the stuff and understand what they're saying. If you can't understand it, then there's no point in having any opinion on the situation. So you need to understand it. Then you can go through 1,000 different opinions, and if 900 of them say something and 99 of them are complete idiots and one has some completely different idea, then how do you know which of these to trust? Because 900 guys can just as well be right as wrong. So, but if you understand that the stuff that you're looking at and go through all the bases on why they're basing stuff on and how they're coming to their conclusions, then you can look at these and say, okay, maybe this one guy is right, maybe he's wrong, maybe one of the 99 idiots is right or wrong, who knows, or maybe the 900 experts are right or wrong, who knows. But yeah, if you understand that, then you can look at it for yourself and actually know what is going on and what things are going to affect whatever it is you're working on. So understanding things is important, and that's why I'm trying to go through all of these things and explain these as much as possible, so that you guys can understand it and not just take whatever I'm saying as good or bad, because that is not important at all. It's important that you understand what's happening. So I'm trying to do that, but please comment if there is something that I can go through better also. But anyway, back to this. So we've arrived at this simplified equation, and from this we can draw some conclusions. For instance, we have the mass of the car here and here also, but not here. So for instance, if our downforce sort of coefficient area here is very small in relation to the mass of the car, then this is basically close to zero then, and then we have the mass of the car, or then this sort of cornering speed equation simplifies to mass of the car times the gravity times friction times corner radius divided by the mass of the car. So the mass of the car basically cancels each other out, and then your velocity squared, let's see if we can get this back. Okay, excellent. Yeah, and then our velocity, cornering speed, velocity squared is just the gravity constant times friction multiplier times corner radius, which are all basically constants. Or yeah, you can change the racetrack that you're racing on, and you can change the gravity influence of the Earth on your racing vehicle. And if you're not allowed to change tires either, you're stuck with whatever tire friction you have. So then you're just like trying to do small things. But once this part of the equation starts getting meaningful in relation to the mass of your car, and this is the most important thing of this whole episode to understand, like once this starts getting meaningful, then the mass of the car also starts influencing your cornering velocity. And that is something I think people don't understand enough. That okay, yeah, we can increase downforce and whatever, and okay, yeah, we can reduce the weight of the car to increase its performance, and not really that much. I mean, if you have very low downforce, for instance, the rules are very, very restrictive on what you're racing, or you're just the competition level is not very high, and there's no point in you putting in effort to increase the downforce a lot, or any kinds of those kinds of things resulting in the downforce being very low in relation to the mass of the car, then reducing the mass of the car will not increase your cornering speed by a lot. Of course, because of the tire loading situation, if you reduce the mass of the car, you will gain, the friction multiplier will be slightly increased, so you will get small gains, but the gains will be very small. But once you start having significant downforce in relation to the mass of the car, then the mass of the car starts getting very, very important for cornering. And yeah, that's the main thing about this equation. And that's really what is the most important for some situations at least. So for instance, in a situation like this, yeah, gaining some speed here will increase your speed throughout the whole lap, and that will make you much faster. However, of course, if you have some super long straight or something like that, then of course you want more power, and the weight is not that important anymore, because you're having power against the drag and not against any mass that will hold you back from acceleration. So those are the I think main takeaways that we want to do from this. So it's all about cornering speed and high downforce and low car mass. And that is what will gain you cornering speed, and that is what will gain you huge gains on the lap times. But so to bring this back to how this relates to the er8 build at all. So we just quickly pull up some pictures for you guys on that, so we can take a look at what that original car actually looks like. Let's go to Wikipedia and get the Opel GT here, and let's see if we have some good side view. Okay, we don't have any super good side view, but yeah. So yeah, this is the basic shape of the car. So retake on how all of this correlates with the er8 chassis selection. Had some technical difficulties. Miserable. Anyway, so we ended up with the choosing the Opel GT chassis for this car, or for the basis for the build. Of course, we're not using very much of the chassis, but of course the cockpit area and the front part of the front part of the chassis needs to be used, and stuff like that. But basically, yeah, we wanted to have the smallest possible frontal area, and also the lightest possible car, and with also a very good sort of aerodynamic top shape. Of course, the bottom part of the car is completely, or most of the car actually is completely focused on producing the maximum amount of downforce anyway. So the bottom part is not very important. It just needs to be that there are no constraints there in the way of doing a sort of all-out ground effect design on that. yeah, so we ended up with the Opel GT. It's a very lightweight car, and the top surface is very, very smooth and well designed. It was supposedly the first car designed with wind tunnel stuff, and this is 1960s, I think, when it was designed. So our chassis is a 1969 model. But yeah, the A-pillar design here around the windows, and also the side window and the door shape is very, very smooth around this, and the rear window has a little bit too high of a rake, but they've added a small lip on top of that to produce some turbulence to keep the airflow sort of consistently, well, not attached because there's turbulence, but to keep the airflow sort of consistently shaped here to the very low height of the bottom of the car. And this is also important to have a very low top trailing edge on the car chassis, because we want to run the diffuser as high as possible. So we basically run that all the way, or as close as we can get to the top edge of the rear surface on that car, so we can get the highest possible air speed past that point. And we also design the rear wing to boost that velocity as high as possible, because with that we can get more suction of air from the bottom of the car, and that of course will vastly increase the amount of downforce we can get from the ground effect system. And yeah, it's not as wide as we would want, because yeah, wider cars will allow a larger area with the World Time Attack Pro-Am class rules. Specifically, the width of the car is specified based on the width of the original chassis. And there are some really, really expensive megabuck cars that would be even better to start with, but yeah, they produced 100,000+ of these back in the 60s, so you can get these chassis for cheap. And if you can fit into these, so if you're have some super tall driver or something like that, then yeah, this is not going to work. But yeah, for motorsport stuff, of course, you don't want some super tall guys for motorsports anyway, so that's not really a problem. And I think this is very close to the optimal shape. Of course, ideally you would want four-wheel drive, but yeah, you have to make compromises with everything, and you need to use the budget available in the best way possible. So yeah, that's basically the most important things on the chassis selection for us with that car. And yeah, that's basically the main point around what makes a fast race car. So this has been er8 the Tech episode 1, and if there is interest, and yeah, if you have suggestions on how to improve situations, but how to improve the videos and the content and what you want to see in the future, these can of course be changed. So leave your feedback, comments. Yeah, if you want to share this video, we'll be super interested with that. And I'll see if I can find some related content. Maybe I'll put some links in the video description for that, so check that out also. Bye guys.